Welcome to another installment of Meditation and Mindfulness. We'll start, as usual, with a meditation. So I think this one will do a meditation without music, a silent meditation, because it is useful to sometimes meditate in silence and just try to practice accepting all of the sounds that are coming to you. I mean, it's nice to have music to block out the world, but a part of mindfulness is accepting everything in the world as well. So it is good on occasion to, you can think of it as maybe challenging yourself. How well can you still meditate with the distractions of ambient noises coming in? So we'll do this one in silence. Um, and I think we'll also use a breathing technique for this one. So let's find our comfortable seat with a straight spine and close our eyes, start settling into the body, becoming aware of the body, feeling into everything, feel into your feet, into your hands. Feel your connection to the earth through your feet. Feel your hips stacked over your legs. Allow the chest to stack over the hips. Let's roll the shoulders up to the ears and then down and back, allowing them to remain soft and relaxed as we meditate. Stacking the neck over the shoulders. Slightly tuck the chin, reach the crown of the head up to the heavens. And for this meditation, let's practice breathing technique similar to what we did last week, but a little bit different. So we'll inhale, not to any specific count, but just inhale to a full breath so that you feel your lungs are completely full. And then hold that just for 2 counts. And then exhale as long as you can. Try to slow the exhale down and drag it out as long as is comfortable. So don't starve yourself of oxygen or anything, but just try to elongate the exhale as long as is possible. That's it. And notice the effect that has on your state of mind. So we'll go ahead and start now. We'll be sitting for a few minutes. Remember, breathing in a nice, full, deep breath, filling the lungs, holding that just for a count of 2, and then exhaling for as long as you can. And just continue that breathing pattern throughout the meditation. Slowly begin to deepen your inhale, returning to a normal breath. Bringing our awareness back into the body. How was that technique? Any thoughts or comments or questions?
I've been practicing that myself, so it's very comfortable and familiar for me.
Great.
I really enjoyed that. I really felt that I was able to go within more deeply. Like I just came from another meditation where we were opening up, and so it felt like it really brought me back in.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. Yeah. So there are all kinds of different meditation techniques, and they all kind of have a different flavor like that. And so it's good to experiment with different techniques and find out which ones work for you. And sometimes, depending on your mood or your state of mind, you'll over time you might start to develop a sense of what technique is right for you at that particular time as well. So that one is really great for relaxing yourself. Like we talked about last week, whenever you consciously extend or lengthen the exhale, it triggers the parasympathetic nervous system to slow down the heart rate and slow down the mind. So that's another great technique. And it's a little bit different than the one we did last week with just account for a specific amount of time. Because I really feel like this one, when you're trying to extend it as long as possible, it for me it kind of pulls me into it more, like you were saying, Carla, because you're really focused on that breath and paying attention to that breath. And so that's why I enjoy that one.
It does make the external noises go away because you're focused on the
Yeah.
count. Mm-hmm.
Right. Great.
I like it for that reason. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Great. Okay, so this week I wanted to talk about the idea of faith and spirituality. Hello, Diane.
Hello, I'm sorry I'm late.
No problem. This is perfect timing. We just finished our first meditation, so we
Oh,
were,
good.
yeah, I was just about to start talking about the first topic of this week.
Okay.
So are you a member of Grace Good Shepherd Church?
I kind of come there, and I was doing a lot in the open mic.
Oh, okay.
But I am actually have been a long time member of Joyful Healer.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Great. I'm not sure. I don't know what that is, but
it's a Methodist church.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you for joining us tonight. Welcome.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is the other two participants right now are Carla and Helen. I know them from the yoga teacher.
Hello. Sorry I'm late.
Oh, no worries.
No problem.
Life
okay.
happens. Yeah. Great. So I was about to start talking about the idea of faith and spirituality. So you don't often hear about faith and spirituality. It's typically more associated with religion, I think. So I thought we could start with a little discussion. If anyone wants to volunteer, what that word means to you, or the idea of faith. What does that mean to you? What do you think of when you hear that word? Anyone want to jump in? There's no right.
I think of trust. The word trust comes to mind.
Mm-hmm.
You know, sometimes you say have faith that this is going to work out. So it's sort of asking to be trusting of something.
Yeah, sure. Anyone else? Any ideas? Thoughts? Sure, yeah. Well, to me, faith, like, oh, do you want to say something, Carla?
Oh, it's okay.
You can go ahead if you want to.
Well, just for faith, I also feel it is the context of my relationship to the divine.
Mhm. Yeah, that's often how you hear of it. And to me, faith just means believing in something when there's no concrete physical evidence that it's true. And so you can have faith in lots of things. You can have faith in people, faith in ideas, faith in organizations. But tonight I want to talk about faith as it applies to spirituality, because for me personally, faith is an important part of my spiritual practice. Um, and what I mean by that is, for me, faith, I have faith that everything happens exactly the way it has to. I mean, not necessarily that the way it should or needs to, but just the way everything unfolds, life unfolds in the only way that is possible, given the preceding events before it. And so this is, I choose to believe in this idea because it's comforting to me. And well, I guess it's a little bit more than that, because I choose to believe that everything works out exactly the way it has to, but also that everything works out, and it's all part of the universe rediscovering itself. So I talked, I think a couple weeks ago about the Hindu idea of the world as a play and how God loses itself, or the universal consciousness loses itself in the world, and how all of us and everything in the world, they're all parts in the play that's all played by God, all played by the universal consciousness. We're all just different parts um, coming back together, relating to each other. And the idea from Hinduism is that the whole point of existence is for God to forget that he's God, forget that it's all powerful, in order to have experiences other than existing in perfect bliss. Because existing in bliss forever, it starts to lose meaning. If you have questions, there's a recording on my website that explains more about this idea. But so I have faith that everything that happens in the world, everything that happens in my life, whether it's good or bad, that's all just part of the universe finding itself again. So the universe goes out into the world and becomes all these people, all these plants, all these objects, and loses itself, right? The universal consciousness forgets that it's everything when it inhabits us. And that's what leads to all the suffering in the world. And, but all that suffering, all the pain, and all the good things too, they're all just part of this process of the universe finding itself once more. And for me personally, whenever bad things are happening in my life, when I'm going through a struggle, or it seems like um, bad things are just happening, I'm having bad luck, right? Sometimes it seems like just nothing's working out. I always try to think, what is the lesson I need to learn from this right now? And that's been really helpful for me. Instead of getting upset that things aren't working out well, or getting mad at someone or something, I just try to figure out, what lesson do I need to learn from this? And I think you can kind of consider that if there's one thing we have to do in life, it's just learn from our lessons, because it's all part of the process. We're all part of the process of the universe rediscovering itself. And it's also comforting to me to apply this to the world at large, especially right now with all of this strife and all the conflict in the world. It can seem kind of bleak sometimes, although yesterday was a good day. But when the world starts getting really heavy and really bleak, I take comfort in this idea that that's all that struggle, all that strife, that's all part of humanity rediscovering ourselves, rediscovering what it means to be human, and it's all part of the process of humanity rediscovering that we are God, that we are part of the universal consciousness. And so when we can really believe this idea, when we really have faith in this idea, it's extraordinarily comforting, and especially in times of hardship, but also in times when things are going good. And so, yeah, to me, that's what faith means, and how faith can be a very important part of a spiritual practice. So are there any ideas or any questions about that idea? Or any comments?
Is this say mute?
You were talking, you got muted.
How's that? Is that better?
Now I can hear you.
Yeah, I'm better.
Yeah. Good.
So I think about suffering. Sometimes suffering has a meaning, a message, a strength as a result. And sometimes in my life, suffering is just abject suffering. There is no redeeming lesson that I can find, except that sometimes suffering is just that. It is abject, unbearable at times suffering. And it is part of being an animal with a body that can hurt and a heart that can hurt. And sometimes it hurts so bad. And then other times it doesn't. And I think one of the hard things that I have in philosophy or psychology is people want to find meaning in every event, emotion, action. And I think sometimes the meaning is there is no meaning. It is just abject suffering. Now, maybe that's very dark, but that's where I've come to in these years of my life. I don't know. Have you guys thought about that?
Yeah, and well, and if that works for you, if that brings you comfort, then that's great. I mean, it doesn't matter if anyone else believes it. If that works for you, then that's great. And yeah, I definitely know what you mean. Sometimes we want to try to find meaning, a reason for suffering, because sometimes it seems more bearable if there's a reason for it. But as I was talking about earlier, and about that idea from Vedanta that the world is just a play, and the world exists primarily for the purpose of having experiences. So then suffering is one of those experiences. And you can think of it that we suffer so that we can know joy, we can know bliss. If you never suffer, then you have nothing to compare bliss with or joy with. And so that's another way to think about it. But yeah, sometimes suffering is just suffering. It's part of the human condition. Yeah. Yeah, thanks for sharing. Anyone else?
I'm a believer that we have to have contrast, and that's just part of living here. And the contrast, so it's sort of agreeing with what you said, the contrast allows us to see the white and the black, the good and the bad, right? Because if it was always bliss, then bliss becomes nothing special.
Yeah.
So I've had contrast in my own life, and that has proven to be the case.
Yeah.
So that's more of an acceptance of things when people are looking at it very dark and negative. I tend to not look at it that way. I just kind of put it in its category of contrast to help us have a clearer vision of what's opposite of it.
Right.
So if there's strife, which we have right now, but there's also peace. Otherwise, we won't know what peace is or what it looks like.
Exactly. Yeah.
Matt, I can't remember exactly how you said it, but it was something along the lines of, what is this teaching me? I think is kind of to summarize what you said. And I found that that's a great way to see things versus, I think when I was much younger, it was always, why is this happening to me? And I think the pivot to what is this trying to teach me has been absolutely, just kind of life changing. And yeah, and it's so much more empowering. But it is also that thing of not trying to wish it away, but actually being willing to look at it for what it is, as it is, and then go from there. So it really resonated with me, what you were saying.
Great. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's important when we're suffering, when we're really sad or really hurt or angry, and we've talked about this before, it's important not to try to just distract yourself from it, not to try to ignore it, because whenever we try to ignore our feelings or hide from our feelings, we just wind up repressing them, and then they cause more problems later. So I think having some concept of faith or some way, I mean, it sounds like all of you have ways that you've made peace with suffering, and that's great, because it's ultimately a personal choice. I mean, we're all on our own journey, on our own path, and so we all have to figure out ways that work for us to help us make it through on the journey.
I like what Carla said, how you shifted from when you were younger, how you felt about events happening to you, or why did it happen to you. So that was good insight. I like that.
Yeah, great. Yeah, and I guess this could be, this is related to the idea of having faith in God's plan, right? I was raised in the Christian tradition, and the idea that having faith that everything happens for a reason, but I started to struggle with that, because it can become tricky when you're really suffering, you're seeing someone else suffering. It's like, why does God want to make that happen, right? And so for me personally, that was a struggling point with accepting God's plan. But this idea of just more, it's all the universe happening, the universe becoming, that for me is more easily explains suffering and misery. Or that's my personal take on the idea. Great. So any other final questions or comments on that topic? That's a very fluffy cat you have there, Diane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. She
Great.
decided she needed some loving tonight.
Yeah, looks very sweet.
Thank you.
Okay.
She's getting jealous. You're with other people.
Yeah. Yeah. Oops.
All right, well, let's meditate again. And it's this one, if you'd like to use music. So Diane, I don't know if you saw in the emails, sometimes I'll send out a playlist on Spotify ahead of time if you'd like to use music while we're meditating. It's totally optional. You can just sit in silence if you prefer. But if you have Spotify and you like music, I don't know if you saw that, but so in the future, if you would like to use music, you can. If you don't have it now, it's totally fine. But if
I don't normally use music when
Okay.
I meditate, so it's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. So if you'd like to use music, get your playlist ready. I'll
Tell us when.
tell us when to say play. So let's find our comfortable seat. Straight spine, sitting up straight and comfortable. And for this meditation, let's focus on the third eye. We've done this before. So the third eye, it's the kind of the point in the middle of your forehead, but in this position, but kind of in the middle of your head. And a visualization technique I like for this one is to imagine that your third eye is like a unicorn horn growing out of your head, like a rainbow colored unicorn horn. And so while we're meditating, let's imagine that we're just beaming light out into the world through this unicorn horn, through our third eye, because there's a lot of darkness in the world right now. And so anything we can do to bring more light to the world is great. So let's visualize that while we're doing this meditation. All right, so if you'd like to use music, go ahead and hit play now, and we'll come back in about 6 minutes. Let's slowly deepen or inhale. Start to bring awareness back into the body. So how was that technique? How was that meditation? Anyone have any comments, questions?
Nice puppy.
Wait. Hi, Waylon.
Hi, Waylon.
You do.
I expressed this before. I have had in the past a very difficult time with meditation. And so now with the music, it really helps to relax me and get me into a deeper state. So I enjoy the music so much.
Great. Good. Anything else anyone want to share?
I feel really clear-headed, like that focus on the third eye. I just feel like that extra bit of time there, I feel like I've cleared out some cobwebs.
Mm-hmm.
So that's nice.
Great. Yeah. Yeah. Meditating on the third eye, it can help us see things as they are. Helps us see through the delusions of the world. So yeah, great.
I thought it was interesting. Sometimes I would project just a little ways, and other times way far from this third eye. I didn't have any control or any idea why.
Oh,
At certain times it was one way or the other, but it just was
interesting.
kind of cute.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Looks like you were in a really deep state of meditation there, Dan.
Yeah. I just
It's nice.
it was so comfortable. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
I experienced a little bit of that. I could relate to that. Yeah.
Good.
Good. Good to hear.
Like, it was almost like there was a flow, kind of a flowing in and out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. Great.
Matt, what else can you tell us about third eye? Because I don't know that much about it, to be honest.
Oh, sure. Well, it's sometimes considered kind of the seat of consciousness in the body, right here in the third eye. Yeah, it's and there's some ideas that when you awaken the third eye, when it opens, then it greatly increases your awareness to the world. And there are some reports or some ideas that can kind of, when you spend a lot of time focusing on the third eye, you can start to have psychic abilities, kind of feel things, know things. It's really associated with a deeper knowing of reality. And so, yeah.
Is that like where the awakening happens?
Well, it depends on what kind of metaphor you believe in. I mean, these are all different just metaphors for what happens in the body as you progress spiritually. But the idea is as you awaken, the higher chakras start to open, right? The heart chakra opens, the throat opens, the third eye opens. And so Kundalini energy starts moving up the Sushumna. And then the awakening happens when the crown chakra opens. And so that's when, according to various schools of thought, once the crown chakra opens, that's when you become enlightened, or first go into samadhi, and then after you go into samadhi a whole bunch, then you become enlightened. But it doesn't do much good to kind of focus on those objectives, because then it gives meditation, it makes it seem like there's a destination to it, but it's more important to just focus on meditation as the journey itself, just focusing, not trying to, and I speak this from personal experience. And in my when I was working with my teacher, I always had this goal in mind, right? That I wanted to become enlightened. I wanted to reach samadhi. So whenever I would be meditating and get into a really deep state and be like, oh, maybe this is it. Maybe this is the time I'll go into samadhi. And then that, of course, distracts me and brings me back into the world. And so now I've just kind of given up on any idea of anything happening, right? And I think
You get disappointed, right?
yeah. I mean, after 10 years of trying to make it happen, it doesn't happen. It gets kind of disheartening. And so that's why I've kind of, I don't like to view it as something I'm trying to attain. I'm just trying to focus on the experience of it, having the experience for itself. Yeah, those are my two thoughts. So I guess I say that because, I mean, it's really cool and interesting to talk about the chakras, but it's just a metaphor for kind of what's going on in the body spiritually. So don't get too hung up on any of these definitions of things like that. If you ask 10 different teachers, you'll get 10 different answers about it. So, I mean, it's interesting and it's helpful to provide a nice framework for how to think about things, but just don't get too hung up in any of these labels or anything like that. Anyway, that's my advice. Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. So the other topic I wanted to talk about tonight was the idea of detachment. So this is something that comes up a lot in spirituality. And so I thought we could have a discussion about this. If anyone wanted to share what detachment means to you, or what comes to mind when you think of detachment.
I can start. I've been trying to practice that for a long time now, and I find myself sort of successful at doing that, and then sometimes I fall back into it, which is probably normal. And my favorite way of explaining how I've been practicing it is I try very hard to not be attached. So rather than detachment, I try hard not to be attached to any particular outcome of any particular situation. So, which is very different from how I used to be. How I used to be was, without realizing, I had expectations for how things should be. And when it didn't happen, there was a lot of disappointment. So obviously my life had a lot of disappointment because things don't always work out the way you expect or want it to work out, right? I think life works out the way it's supposed to. So now I have surrendered, and so I don't have attachment to any particular outcome. And it works really well for me. I'm much happier because of it.
Yeah, great.
And I have to remind myself sometimes. And when I go dark or I go disappointment, then I tell myself, well, because you were attached to some outcome. Remind myself, like, no, that's not what I want to do.
Yeah. Great. Anyone else?
I can confuse detachment with dissociation. And in psychology, if a child is traumatized, they dissociate from their bodies, basically. And I have a great deal of that. I have training and helping others as well with dissociation and association. One of the fascinating things to me is that the yogis have known it for thousands of years, but when they study brains, meditation is what reconnects the neural pathway from the dissociated cerebral back to the limbic. And it's what helps your brain heal from having to leave your body because stuff's happening you can't handle. And it's very interesting to me how I watch people who meditate. There is profound healing sometimes. And it's so cool. Because I don't know, I mean, I studied, for example, Aikido like 8 years, and every time I stepped on the mat was a brand new day. I had no body memory at all because I was so dissociated from my body. And I kept trying, it didn't work. But meditation has worked in a lovely way.
Oh.
So it's curious how the science backs it now.
Yeah, I haven't heard that before about the research showing that meditation helps reconnect disassociated people. Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a book called The Body Keeps the Score, which is probably the Bible on trauma, if you're interested in ever, or you could watch a YouTube on it. There's a lot out there now because they can watch the brain light up and all that.
Right. And
It's amazing, for thousands of years, these dudes knew it, and taught it, and they didn't know why. Very cool.
Yeah, and so you bring up a great point, but I think sometimes, I think probably you guys know enough that you don't think this, but sometimes detachment can be thought of, like you're saying, as more like dissociating, or just withdrawing from the world, withdrawing from emotions, and that's not what it means at all. It's exactly like Helen was saying, and it ties in with the idea of faith that I was talking about earlier, that if you if you have faith that everything works out exactly the way it has to, then that allows you to be detached from the outcome. And that allows you to live life much more fully. Because if you're not afraid of bad things happening, it's much easier to just dive fully into life and live life more fully. I think for me personally in my life, practicing detachment is helping me when it's come time to make big life changes, right? So 2 years ago, I left my comfy corporate job in San Francisco and moved to Costa Rica. And my faith that everything works out the way it should and my detachment kind of helped me do that without too much fear. I mean, just help me have faith, or help me trust that even though I'm doing this kind of crazy thing and taking a big risk, that whatever happens is exactly what I need to happen to me. And so, like I was saying, it helps you, it takes a lot of the fear out of life and allows you to, it allows you to open yourself up to emotions more, because if you're not scared of what's going to happen. So it can actually help you live a much fuller life instead of not a dissociated life. So
Agree with that. I feel like my life's much improved because I don't have the attachment.
right.
Isn't it human to attach? I mean, we attach to our parents or our lovers. If we're not attached, most people aren't happy. Isn't that true, or am I wrong?
Well, this is a different kind of attachment. I mean, you can still have close emotional ties with people, close emotion. And detachment actually allows you to form deeper ties to people, because if you're not fixated on a particular outcome from that relationship with a person, so say if you really want to have a particular kind of relationship with some kind of person, but they don't want to have that same kind of relationship back, then that can cause you pain. And if that's happened several times, especially like in romantic relationships, you can be afraid to even open yourself up to relationships. But if you cultivate detachment and you're not attached to any particular outcome from this relationship you're trying to form with a person, then it allows you to give yourself fully to the relationship and allow it to develop into whatever it is supposed to be, rather than being fixated on being attached to a certain type of relationship developing with this person. Does that make sense?
I think it's good on paper.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah. So, well, what do you mean by that? In what way?
I think it's real hard to not have
Hmm.
ideas about what I expect, what I am looking for, whether I'm attached to a friend or expect a friend to show up or call me, and they don't for a long time, that, to not hurt and say, oh, it's okay, I love them, that I do have needs and expectations, and maybe it wouldn't be so painful if I didn't, but it wouldn't be the reward, possibly. I don't know.
Hmm.
Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, there's no doubt that it is difficult. And like you're saying, we are kind of programmed from birth and trained from birth, and we have an inherent tendency to attach like that. And so it definitely is difficult. But I think it's more difficult to go through life not striving for detachment. I think it opens you up for more pain, or it can lead to just more of a dissociation, more just kind of, if you have a history of not getting what you need out of a relationship, it can make you just want to withdraw from the world and stop even trying. So, but it is difficult. But or for me personally, trying to cultivate detachment and cultivate faith that it works out exactly the way it's supposed to, that allows me to keep entering into new relationships without fear that I'm going to get hurt, or it's fear that it's not going to turn out the way that I hope that it does.
To add on that, I find that detachment is actually a form of openness. And I think when there are a lot of expectations, that just creates a lot of rules and a lot more constriction. And so I find that cultivating more of the detachment, it actually opens things up even more, because if you didn't have an expectation, then things can just, circles can expand, horizons can, go farther. And so it's just been an interesting exploration to just be like, well, what if I just didn't have an attachment around this? Mm-hmm. What if it just is what it is, and I'm open to however it can evolve, regardless, and I'm just along to have that experience. It's actually quite liberating, and it's freeing for me, and I imagine it's freeing for whoever I'm in relationship with on that.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, as the devil's advocate, I mean, like an open marriage situation, we tried that in the 70s. It mostly didn't work, based on how humans function. To be detached. Well, I'm here today, I'm gone tomorrow, and so on and so forth. You know what I mean? I'm playing devil's advocate.
I hear what you're saying, but I think a lot of it might be actually what you're projecting into the situation. I think it has to do a lot with what your perception of what things ought to be. Whereas my perception is just, what if I was just open? And I don't necessarily mean that in an open marriage kind of way, but
I just took it as an example.
Right. But I think, again, the hurt feelings all come from either what you're projecting into the situation or what your expectations were of the situation. And where I'm coming from is a place of, well, what if we just kind of didn't pile on those types of rules and expectations? Then with that open mind, almost that beginner's mind of just being open, you might actually be completely changed by experiencing something that you had not expected or anticipated or tried to manage.
Right. I'd like to add something, Diane. That was a good example, actually. And I know exactly what was going on in the 70s because I'm old enough to remember that time.
Tell us more, Helen.
I'm going to turn this.
So what I want to add is that if, and let's pretend there were 10 participants in Diane's situation. If all 10 people, is she listening or not?
I'm sorry, I had to turn that off. I'm here. I'm sorry, 10 people.
I want to add something because this not being attached has really helped me. My life is enriched because of it. So I want to share what I think. I want to add to what you said because that was a very good example, Diane. So let's put 10 people in that situation that you were talking about, the open marriage. If all 10 people had entered it with an agreement, let's say you have to enter with an agreement that said, okay, whatever we're going to be doing in this open relationship, we will have no attachment to the outcome. We're not going to be attached to that it's going to work or not work or be screwed up or fall in love or hurt people. No attachment, no expectations. If everybody had that agreement, then the outcome of it would actually be quite different from what you stated earlier. And I have real life proof of that. In other words, not what Carla's thinking, but I have.
How many husbands do you have, Helen?
Well, I have so many life examples of this because this was a big part of turning my life around from negativity to being optimistic and being positive. So it's a very real thing for me. so like a very silly example, and this is not my example, but a silly example would be if you went to a job interview and you go, I hope they hire me for $100,000. I hope they hire me for 100,000. Then when they offer you a job at 75, you're going to be slightly disappointed because you were attached to the $100,000 figure. But if you have no expectation of anything, I just am going to go to this interview and I have no attachment to any outcome. I have no idea what's going to happen. And then when they don't hire you or don't give you the money you want, you're not disappointed because you didn't have anything in mind. Conversely, if they hire you and offer you $200,000, and you didn't have attachment to that, that would be a very pleasant surprise. So either way, both outcomes, you're not disappointed and you're not hurt and you're not sad, right? Using the example I just gave you, right? Whether you're hired or not, and whether you got the money or not. So that's how it's been working for me, and it really is working.
Yeah.
And I use that a lot with my husband, because if I expect a certain outcome from him every day, I will have disappointment every day. So I've been married 34 years now, and we're still getting along really well. And I had to take that position of don't have any expectations of how it's supposed to be, because other people are other people. We have no idea if they stubbed their toe that day, or if they got up and felt happy, right? We don't know what's going on with other people, but we only know what's going on with ourselves and can only control ourselves. So I just wanted to offer that, if that helps.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's exactly true. But I think, like Diane was saying, sometimes it's easier said than done. I mean, even if we try not to have attachments, sometimes, even if we try not to have expectations, sometimes there's this little part in the back of our brain that still kind of has an expectation, right? And we can still be disappointed when something doesn't happen. And that's okay. I mean, no one's perfect. I certainly still develop expectations sometimes, and that's fine. It's part of being human. But the important thing is say something doesn't meet our expectations, then the important next step is to just kind of sit without whatever feelings that brings up. So maybe we thought we were totally detached and okay with whatever happened, but then something happens and we're upset. So then we don't want to try to just ignore that we're upset, or just try to say, oh no, I'm detached. I mean, we can't force our brains to be detached, right? We're still going to have emotions. We're still going to get upset when things happen. And when that happens, the important thing is just to sit with those feelings, right? Feel them fully, and then maybe try to figure out what's making us upset, why exactly that's upsetting us. Because especially if we say we're going into some situation and we think we're detached and we have no expectations about an outcome, but then something happens and we still get upset, and sometimes we might even be kind of surprised that we're upset. And that's your subconscious telling you something, that this is something we need to look at, right? So I think, like you're saying, Diane, it is easier said than done. And when we're not detached, when we are suffering because we're expecting outcomes, that's an opportunity for us to discover something about ourselves, discover something that maybe we didn't know was in there, or about something going on in our subconscious that maybe we can use this opportunity to bring it out in the light and understand it better.
It's definitely something I had to practice. It's a journey, Diane. And of course, I fall back into it still today. But I know the difference now, and I know how good it feels when I don't have attachment. And I know how crummy it feels when I'm attached. So I have been proving it to myself over and over again. So it's a journey, still practicing it. But I'm happy to know I have this option. So that's the big difference. Like someone, whispered it in my ear. I didn't come up with this on my own. And so I said, okay, let me try this. And so little by little, I would try it, and it definitely gives me good results.
Great. Okay, we're over time now, so if anyone has to go, you're welcome to leave.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm gonna leave. Good to see
I was going to do one more meditation if anyone wants to stay, but if you need to go, that's fine.
Yeah, I'm gonna go. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah. I
Bye.
guess I'll go too. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Oh yeah. Thanks for joining us tonight. It's great.
I didn't know you were doing this. Has it been going long?
This is only since the new year, so this is the 3rd week we've been doing it.
And it's every week?
Every week, every Thursday. Yeah.
I used to do meditation with Kinsey, you
Okay.
know.
Mhm.
Did you know Kinsey?
Yeah, I met him briefly.
Is he still around there?
I think not as much now. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's going to still be teaching that. I'm not sure.
I don't think so, but that's good. I like what you're doing because you're bringing thoughts and ideas as well as the stillness, and that's great.
Great. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm teaching yoga live on Facebook on Tuesdays at 5.
At 5 p.m.
Yeah. And that's just streamed live on the Abbey of the Redwoods Facebook page.
Oh, Abbey of the Redwoods at 5 o'clock.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Good to know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you. Nice meeting you.
Yeah. And have a good night.
Okay.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.